Okay, today we're going to be learning about x and y intercepts. So before, when we were graphing, you guys were using a table of values. That, if you remember, looked something like this. And you would pick x values, plug it into your equation, get your y values, and that would give you your ordered pairs. Well, that still works, and sometimes that's our best method. Today we're going to use another method, and we're going to use intercepts. Intercepts are where they cross each of the axes. So an x-intercept is where your line crosses your x-axis, and the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. So an x-intercept of a graph is the x-coordinate where it crosses the x-axis. And then the y-intercept is the y-coordinate of the graph where it crosses the y-axis. Now, if you think about your coordinate plane, if you have a line, anywhere it hits your x-axis, your y value is going to be 0. Okay? And that's just an example. So to determine the x-intercept of the graph, find the value of x when y is 0, because it hasn't moved up or down from the origin if it's on your x-axis. Likewise, in this example, to find the y-intercept, our x value is 0 because it hasn't moved side to side off the origin. Okay? X and y values don't matter on the opposite intercept. So, for example, on the x-intercept, it doesn't matter what the x value is. The y has to be 0. And for a y-intercept, it doesn't matter the y value as long as x is 0. So we're going to look at two methods to find it using an equation. The first one would just be substituting in. Okay, so to find an x-intercept, you're going to plug 0 in for y, because you know that's your y-coordinate of that ordered pair. And we know that anything times 0 is 0. So basically, that term is going to go away, because when you add or subtract 0, it's not going to change the value. So then we divide by 2, and x in this case is 14. That tells me that the line 2x plus 2y equals 28 will hit my x-axis where x is 14. To find the y-intercept, we're going to plug 0 in for x and solve. So since 2 times 0 is 0, again, that has no value, so you can pretty much just drop that term and solve for y. So we found that y is also 14. Now, that's not always going to be true. X and y won't always be the same. This is just a certain case where that happens. Another method you can use is called the cover-up method. And that's going to be kind of hard for me to show through the video, so we'll make sure we reteach that in class. But since we know the term that 0 goes away, you don't have to substitute 0 in. You can literally use your hand and cover up the term that has the variable you want to be 0. So for example, if you're looking for your x-intercept, you know this y term is going to go away. So just pretend it's not there. You can almost cross it out, and don't actually do that. Use your hand to cover it up. Now just divide each side by 2. Okay? The same is true for your x-intercept, or your y-intercept, I'm sorry. You know x is 0, so use your hand to cover that up. Don't lose the sign in front of your y term. And in this case, we're dividing each side by -2 or +2. If it were a subtraction, you would divide by a -2. Again, that's a hard concept to see without me actually using my hands to cover it up, so we'll make sure we go over that again in class. Okay? Let's look at the next problem. If 4x minus 2y equals 10, to find our x-intercept, we can plug 0 in for y, which goes away, and now just divide. And it's okay to have a fraction. We're going to simplify. Okay, for the y-intercept, let's look at our cover-up method here. If I have 4x minus 2y equals 10, I know that my x value is going to be 0 on my y-axis. So I'm going to use my hand and cover up that x. Pretend that's gone. So now all you have to do is divide each side by -2 to get y equals -5. If this isn't making sense, just continue to plug 0 in and solve like a normal equation. And you'll get the same exact answer. If you wrote ordered pairs, this ordered pair would be 5 halves 0, and this one would be 0, -5. Okay, we're going to do one more together. Now, if you want to do cover-up method, you need to get x and y on the same side of the equal sign. So to do that, I'm going to add 14x to each side and have 14x plus y equals 7. To get my x-intercept, I can plug 0 in for y, or use your hand and cover up that y term and just divide each side by 14. It's the same thing. And 7 over 14 simplifies to 1/2. To get my y-intercept, plug 0 in for x, or use your hand and cover up 14x. Either way, you'll see that y is 7. Again, these are two different ordered pairs. This one is 1/2 0, and this one is 0, 7. Take a second before you move on. Make sure you re-look over this work, okay, and make sure you understand it. We're going to move on to graphing using the intercept. So you're going to do the same thing you did before, but now we're actually going to plot them. So I'm going to use my cover-up method on this one. So to find my x-intercept, I'm going to cover up the y, so pretend it's gone, and find that x equals 4. Put a dot at x is 4. Now find your y-intercept. To find my y-intercept, cover up the x, divide each side by 2, so y is 2. So I put a dot at y is 2. Now all you have to do is connect your dots with a nice long line and arrows. If you're more comfortable plugging 0 in and solving, that's totally fine. But either way, I think you'll see that it's much easier than making a table of values. For the next one, I'm going to get x and y on the same side. So I'll subtract 10x from each side and have negative 10x plus y equals 5. So my x-intercept, you cover the opposite variable. So to get my x-intercept, I know y is 0, so it's like it's gone. And I'm going to divide each side by a negative 10. This time you're going to get a fraction. Y is negative, x is negative 1/2. There you go. And you can just estimate. And then our y-intercept, pretend that x term is gone. So we know y is 5, so it hits our y-axis at 5, which is going to give me a pretty steep line. Okay? Again, just a shortcut for graphing, much faster than table of values. If you don't like cover-up method, plug 0 in and solve each time. Okay, now we're going to use a graph to find the intercepts. All you have to do is find the 2 points that it hits each of the axes. So it hits my y-axis here and my x here. The x you can see is between 2 points, so we're just going to have to estimate, but I can tell it's a little past negative 1. So I'm going to estimate it to be negative 1.5. And you can write that as an ordered pair if you want. And then the y-intercept is 2, because it hits my y-axis at 2. And where it hits my y, my x is 0. Let's look at 7. I'm going to draw in my 2 points. It hits my x-axis at negative 2 and my y-axis at negative 1. So the ordered pairs would be negative 2, 0 and 0, negative 1. Okay, this is one of those lessons that if you let it be easy, it's easy. If you overthink it, it'll become more complicated than it needs to be. So right now, here are your U-tries, the first 4. Take a second and copy those down. You can pause the video if you need more time. And then your last 2 U-tries are just lines that you already have on your paper. Find your points on each axis and write your points of interception. Okay, if you need any help, make sure you're coming in the morning and we'll go over all this again next class.